While there are many Aboriginal art sites across the Kimberley, they are most prolific in the northern section. We visited 4 sites with substantial Aboriginal artwork. There were other sites in the area, though more difficult to reach, and we didn't attempt them. 2 of these sites were at Swift Bay off Montague Sound and east of Big Island. Once again the explorers took us to the shore. Swift Bay is lined by the very ancient rock which was called King Leopold Sandstone, but which is now called Wanamin Miliwandi Sandstone. King Leopold was a particularly brutal colonist who was responsible for the deaths of millions of people in the Congo. The Wanamin Miliwandi Sandstone is the most ancient layer of rock laid onto the original craton, or Earth's crust, perhaps 1,800 million years ago in the Proterozoic period, before any life forms existed, and before the Kimberley Basin collided and joined with other parts of Western Australia. Here the ancient layers of rock are often divided into blocks, some piled in precarious ways on others. Lighting on a beach in the inlet, we clambered up the rocks to a rocky outcrop. The next site, on another part of Swift Bay, was also above a rock shelf. We noted the rock pools here, some of which were filled with large crystals of salt. We visited the other 2 sites the following day on Jar Island at Vanistat Bay. The island is named after broken earthenware jars that Philip Parker King found there, which he attributed to Macassans who traded with Aboriginal people in this area. There is a group of rocks here which could mark a grave site of a Macassan who died here, but could also be something created by the local people. In these 4 sites of rock art, there are a number of paintings which represent ancestors and probably refer to dreaming stories. There are 2 very distinct styles of these paintings. In the older style, people or spirits are painted in elongated forms, very thin. Sometimes these people have distinctive long headdresses which add to their length, though often at an angle. Some estimates have been made that these paintings could be between 5,000 and 20,000 years old, and perhaps even older. There are Aboriginal traditions that these paintings came from ancient groups which had no laws or kinship groups. Some people of European origin have argued that these paintings represent peoples who came to Australia prior to the present-day Aboriginal people, although these ideas are not accepted by most scholars. They may be some of the most ancient examples of human art anywhere in the world. Aboriginal people speak of the Wandjina, who is the supreme spiritual being who created the country and gave the Aboriginal people laws and kinship rules, with the assistance of the Dreamtime Snake, who is Mother Earth. The Wandjina is represented with great headdresses, sometimes with halos. In one painting, the Wandjina is represented as having many children coming from his head. Some of these paintings of the Wandjina are 3 metres in length. It has been argued that monsoon patterns changed around 5,000 years ago, leading to a long drought, returning to previous patterns about 4,000 years ago, and it's possible that the Wandjina culture emerged about 4,000 years ago. Along with these ancestor paintings are many paintings of various creatures. Turtles, for example, an echidna, fish. This is sometimes called the painting of the 5 ducks, but it may well be oyster catchers. Perhaps these are representations of the creatures created by the Wandjina, or perhaps just creatures found in this area. They may be totems and have special meaning for the clans who lived here. Clans did have particular natural elements for which they took special responsibility. Some of the paintings have been refreshed over the years by the local Aboriginal guardians of the area. This stone was used to pound the rocks that were used to make the paints that were used. The huge middens in this area indicate that large groups of Aboriginal people lived here, perhaps for many years when the paintings were done. It is all indicative of the sophistication of Aboriginal societies, at a time when the earliest cave paintings were being created in Europe, and perhaps even before then. And this was all happening in remote areas where modern Europeans have not found ways of making a living. There's now an oyster farm close to Jar Island, but the oyster farmers live 500 kilometres away in Darwin.